Ana Lucia Torres didn't know that spilling coffee on the wrong man would lead to whispered threats in darkened hallways, stolen glances across mahogany desks, and a dangerous game where the stakes were her heart. Matteo Ricci, the man in the $1,000 suit she'd ruined, didn't just want an apology. He wanted something far more valuable, and he always got what he wanted. The question wasn't whether she'd fall for the most dangerous man in the city, it was whether she'd survive it. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning started like any other disaster in Ana Lucia Torres's life. Her alarm hadn't gone off, her shower had run cold halfway through, and now she was sprinting down Fifth Avenue in shoes that were definitely not made for running, clutching a coffee that was far too hot and far too full. The city moved around her in its usual chaos, a symphony of car horns and shouted conversations and the perpetual construction that seemed to follow her wherever she went. She was 23 years old, barely making rent on her studio apartment in Queens, and currently 17 minutes late for her job as a junior accountant at Morrison & Associates, a firm so prestigious she still couldn't believe they'd hired her. She rounded the corner of 42nd Street at what could only be described as a reckless speed, her dark hair flying behind her like a banner of her perpetual lateness. Her mother would have called it a lack of planning. Her best friend Sophia would have called it Anna being Anna. She called it Monday. The briefcase in her other hand banged against her hip with each step, and she was mentally calculating whether she could make it to the office before her boss noticed when it happened. One moment she was running, the next she collided with what felt like a wall of expensive fabric and solid muscle. The coffee, that treacherous cup of too hot liquid, performed a perfect arc through the air. Time seemed to slow as Anna watched in horror as the contents flew forward, the lid popping off mid-flight, and landed with devastating accuracy on the front of the most expensive suit she had ever seen. The man wearing it stood motionless as the dark liquid spread across the crisp white shirt beneath his jacket, seeping into the charcoal fabric with the permanence of a stain that would cost more to fix than Anna made in a month. For a moment, neither of them moved. The city continued its noise around them, but in their small bubble of disaster, there was only silence. Anna looked up, because the man was tall, easily over 6 feet, and found herself staring into eyes so dark they were almost black. His face could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and strong jawline, with the kind of classical features that belonged on Roman statues or Italian film posters. His hair was dark, swept back from his forehead in a style that suggested both care and carelessness, and there was a slight shadow along his jaw that indicated he'd either forgotten to shave or simply didn't care. But it was his expression that made Anna's stomach drop. He wasn't angry, he should have been furious, shouting, demanding her name and threatening to sue, but instead, he was looking at her with something that might have been amusement. A slow smile curved his lips, and it was the kind of smile that made Anna think of wolves and warning signs in every thriller movie she'd ever watched where the handsome man turned out to be dangerous. His gaze traveled from her face down to the now empty cup in her hand, then back up again, taking in her disheveled appearance with an attention that felt almost physical. When he spoke, his voice was low and smooth, with an accent that confirmed what his features suggested, Italian, but worn soft by years of living elsewhere. "You are in quite a hurry," he said, and there was definitely amusement in his tone now. Rich and warm, like expensive wine, he made no move to wipe at the coffee staining his shirt, just stood there watching her with an intensity that made her want to apologize and run in equal measure. Anna felt her face flush with embarrassment, the heat spreading from her cheeks down her neck. "I am so sorry," she stammered, finally finding her voice. She fumbled in her bag for tissues, napkins, anything that might help, but came up with only a crumpled receipt and a broken pen. "I wasn't looking where I was going, and I'm late, and I'm so sorry. I'll pay for the cleaning, or the replacement, or whatever you need." She was babbling now, the words tumbling out faster than she could control them. "I don't have much money right now, but I can set up a payment plan, or I work in accounting. Maybe I could, I don't know, do your taxes?" The man's smile widened, and he tilted his head slightly, studying her as if she were a puzzle he was trying to solve. He repeated, and there was laughter in his voice now, though he wasn't actually laughing. How generous. Though I think my accountants might object to being replaced by someone who cannot watch where she is walking. He finally looked down at his ruined shirt, and Anna followed his gaze, wincing at the damage. The stain was spectacular in its thoroughness, dark and spreading, and completely ruining what had clearly been a very expensive outfit. I really am sorry, Anna said again, because she didn't know what else to say. She should have been moving, should have been continuing her sprint to work. But something about this man kept her frozen in place. Maybe it was the way he was looking at her, with an attention that suggested he was memorizing every detail of her face. Maybe it was the fact that he still hadn't shown any real anger, just this amused curiosity that was somehow more unsettling than shouting would have been. "What is your name?" he asked suddenly, and the question caught her off guard. "Anna," she said without thinking. "Ana Lucia Torres." Then she realized she'd just given her full name to a stranger on a New York street, which Sophia would have told her was a terrible idea. But it was too late now. "Ana Lucia," he repeated, and the way he said it, with the proper Spanish pronunciation, made her name sound like something romantic instead of just the combination her parents had given her. "A beautiful name. I am Matteo." He didn't offer a last name, and something about that felt significant, though Anna couldn't have said why. He reached into his jacket pocket, somehow managing to make even that simple gesture look elegant despite the coffee staining his clothes, and pulled out a business card. It was thick, expensive paper, the kind that probably cost more per card than Anna's entire box of personal business cards. "You said you work in accounting. Are you happy there?" The question was so unexpected that Anna just stared at him. "Your job," Matteo said patiently. "At this place where you are so desperately late. Do you enjoy it?" His eyes hadn't left her face, and Anna had the strange sensation that he could see through every polite lie she might tell. "It's fine," she said, which was the answer she gave everyone who asked. "It's a good firm, and I'm lucky to work there." "That is not what I asked," Matteo replied, and his tone was gentle but firm. "But we will discuss this another time. You owe me for this suit, Ana Lucia. It is very expensive, custom made in Milano, and I think it is ruined beyond repair." He paused, letting the weight of that statement settle between them. Anna felt her stomach twist with anxiety. She definitely didn't have the money to replace a custom Italian suit. She barely had the money to replace her own worn-out work clothes. "But I am not an unreasonable man. I have a proposal for you." Anna's mouth went dry. "A proposal? You work in accounting, yes? I need someone for my office. Someone who can manage books, handle finances, keep things organized." He said it casually, as if offering jobs to people who spilled coffee on him was something he did regularly. "Work for me for 3 months. Consider it repayment for the damage. Your salary will be generous, much more than you make now, I suspect. At the end of 3 months, your debt is forgiven, and you may choose to stay or leave as you wish." It was possibly the strangest job offer Anna had ever received, and every rational part of her brain was screaming that this was a terrible idea. You didn't accept job offers from strange men on the street, no matter how handsome they were or how good they made your name sound. You especially didn't accept job offers that framed themselves as repayment for damage, as if you were indentured. But there was something about Matteo, something in the way he looked at her, that made her hesitate. And the mention of a generous salary wasn't something she could ignore, not when she'd been eating ramen for dinner 4 nights a week. "I don't even know what kind of business you run," Anna said slowly, trying to buy time to think. "Import and export," Matteo replied smoothly. "I have warehouses, shipping contracts, suppliers. It is all legitimate business, I assure you. You may research my company before you decide. Ricci International." He held out the business card, and after a moment's hesitation, Anna took it. The card was heavy in her hand, printed with elegant black lettering that listed an address in Midtown and a phone number. "Call me when you have made your decision, but do not take too long, Ana Lucia. I am not known for my patience." With that, he stepped past her, somehow managing to make even walking away look like a choreographed movement. Anna stood frozen on the sidewalk, clutching his business card and her empty coffee cup, watching as he disappeared into a waiting black car that had probably been worth more than her entire apartment building. The whole encounter had lasted maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like her entire world had just tilted on its axis. She looked down at the card in her hand, running her thumb over the raised lettering. Matteo Ricci. The name sounded familiar, tickling something in the back of her memory, but she couldn't place where she'd heard it before. A horn honked behind her, jerking her back to reality, and she suddenly remembered that she was now 25 minutes late for work. She shoved the card in her bag and started running again, but her mind was no longer on her job at Morrison & Associates. Instead, she was thinking about dark eyes and dangerous smiles and job offers that felt more like propositions. By the time she reached her office, Anna was 30 minutes late and completely out of breath. Her boss, Marcus Davidson, was waiting by her desk with the expression of a man whose patience had been tested and found wanting. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and a perpetual frown that deepened whenever he looked at Anna, which was often and rarely positive. "Miss Torres," he said, and his voice could have frozen water. "How kind of you to join us. This is the 3rd time this month you've been late." "I'm so sorry, Mr. Davidson," Anna said, setting her bag down and trying to smooth her hair. "There was an incident on the subway, and then I had to wait for the next train." And she trailed off, knowing her excuses sounded weak even to her own ears. "I'm not interested in excuses," Marcus interrupted. "I'm interested in reliability, and you have consistently failed to demonstrate that quality. Consider this your final warning. One more late arrival, and we'll have to discuss your continued employment here." He didn't wait for her response, just turned and walked back to his office, leaving Anna standing by her desk feeling like she'd been slapped. She sank into her chair and stared at her computer screen without really seeing it. Her hands were shaking slightly, whether from the run or the confrontation or the strange encounter with Matteo, she couldn't tell. The office hummed around her with the quiet sounds of keyboards and phone calls and the coffee machine in the break room, all the normal sounds of a normal Monday, except nothing felt normal anymore. "Rough morning?" The voice came from over the cubicle wall, and Anna looked up to see her coworker Jennifer peering down at her with sympathy. Jennifer was older than Anna by about 10 years, with blonde hair always pulled back in a neat bun and the kind of calm competence Anna aspired to but never quite achieved. "You could say that," Anna replied, pulling up her email and trying to focus. Spilled coffee on a stranger, got threatened with firing, the usual Monday chaos. "Spilled coffee on someone?" Jennifer's eyebrows rose. "Please tell me it wasn't a client." "No, just some guy on the street, but it was a really expensive suit." Anna hesitated, then pulled Matteo's business card from her bag. "He offered me a job, actually. Said I could work for him to pay off the damage." Jennifer's expression shifted from sympathy to concern. "Anna, that sounds incredibly sketchy. You didn't accept, did you?" "No, but..." Anna looked at the card again, turning it over in her fingers. "He said the salary would be generous. And you heard Marcus. One more late day, and I'm fired anyway. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to look into it." Even as she said it, she knew how it sounded. Desperate. But she was desperate, wasn't she? Desperate to make rent. Desperate to pay off her student loans. Desperate to feel like she was something more than just another struggling 20-something in an overcrowded city. "Just promise me you'll be careful," Jennifer said, her voice soft. "There are a lot of predators in this city, looking for young women in bad situations." Anna promised, but as she returned to her work, trying to make sense of a spreadsheet that seemed determined to confuse her, she couldn't stop thinking about Matteo's proposal. "Import and export," he'd said. "Ricci International." During her lunch break, she pulled out her phone and searched for the company name. The results were professional and impressive, a legitimate business with offices in New York, Miami, and Rome. They dealt in luxury goods, art, wines, the kind of high-end items that catered to people with more money than Anna could imagine. Everything looked above board, registered properly, with glowing reviews from clients and partners. But there was something else, buried deeper in the search results. A news article from 3 years ago, just a small mention in a piece about organized crime in New York. The name Ricci appeared in a list of families suspected of having mafia connections, but there were no charges, no evidence, just suspicion and speculation. Anna's heart rate kicked up as she read it. Could Matteo be connected to the mafia? The thought should have terrified her, should have made her throw his business card away and forget the whole encounter. Instead, she felt a strange thrill of excitement mixed with her fear. She spent the rest of the day distracted, making small errors in her work that she had to keep correcting. By the time 5 o'clock came around, she was exhausted and confused, and still clutching Matteo's business card like it might hold the answers to questions she hadn't even asked yet. She took the subway home to Queens, squeezed between other tired commuters, and tried to think rationally about her situation. On one hand, accepting a job from a possibly dangerous stranger who might be connected to organized crime was obviously a terrible idea. On the other hand, she was one late arrival away from unemployment, barely making enough to survive, and the promise of a generous salary was more tempting than she wanted to admit. Her apartment was small and dark when she let herself in, just a studio with a kitchen alcove and a bathroom that had seen better decades. The walls were thin enough that she could hear her neighbors' conversations, and the radiator clanked at odd hours, but it was hers, and she'd worked hard to afford even this tiny space. She dropped her bag on the floor and collapsed on her bed, which was also her couch since the room was too small for both. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Dinner tonight? I have gossip." Anna smiled despite her exhaustion. Sofia Rodriguez had been her best friend since college, one of those people who seemed to collect interesting stories the way other people collected stamps. She was currently working as a paralegal for a law firm downtown and had an uncanny ability to make even the most boring legal work sound exciting. "Can't afford it," Anna texted back. "Ramen night again." "My treat," Sophia responded immediately. "You need to get out of that apartment. Meet me at Rose's in an hour." Anna knew there was no point arguing with Sophia once she'd made up her mind, so she agreed and dragged herself into the shower. An hour later, she was sitting across from her best friend at Rose's, a small Mexican restaurant they'd been coming to since their college days, when neither of them had any money and the portions were generous enough to count as 2 meals. Sophia looked at her over a basket of chips and salsa, her dark eyes narrowed in the expression that meant she'd already figured out something was wrong. "Okay, spill. And I don't mean literally, though knowing you, that's entirely possible. What happened?" Anna told her everything, starting with the morning's disaster and ending with the business card currently burning a hole in her purse. Sophia listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her, and by the time Anna finished, her friend's expression had gone from curious to deeply concerned. "Matteo Ricci," Sophia said slowly. "Why does that name sound familiar?" She pulled out her phone and started searching, and Anna watched as her friend's face shifted from confusion to shock. "Oh my God, Anna. Do you have any idea who you spilled coffee on? Apparently someone with an expensive suit and a possibly illegal business?" Anna tried for humor, but it fell flat. "He's not possibly anything," Sophia said, turning her phone to show Anna the screen. It was a news article from 2 years ago, featuring a photo of Matteo at some kind of charity gala. He looked even more devastating in formal wear, all dangerous elegance in a tuxedo, standing next to other men in suits who all had the same aura of barely concealed power. Matteo Ricci is the head of the Ricci family. They're one of the 5 major crime families in New York. Import and export is code for smuggling and money laundering. This man is literally a mafia boss, Anna. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and impossible. Anna stared at the photo on Sophia's phone, at Matteo's face frozen in a moment of what looked like genuine laughter, and felt her world tilt again. A mafia boss. She'd spilled coffee on a mafia boss. And he'd offered her a job. "I can't take his offer," Anna said faintly. "I mean, obviously I can't. That would be insane." Obviously, Sophia agreed, but she was looking at Anna with the expression of someone who knew her friend was already considering it despite the danger. "Promise me you're not actually thinking about this." Anna wanted to promise, wanted to laugh it off and throw away the business card and never think about Matteo Ricci again, but she couldn't, because the truth was, she was thinking about it. She was thinking about his dark eyes, and the way he'd said her name, and the promise of a generous salary that could change her life. She was thinking about how tired she was of struggling, of being one missed alarm away from homelessness, of eating ramen and wearing the same 3 work outfits on rotation because she couldn't afford anything else. What if it's legitimate? She asked, knowing even as she said it how naive it sounded. He said it was all legal business. Maybe the Mafia thing is just rumors. Sophia gave her a look that clearly said she thought Anna had lost her mind. There are photos of him at known Mafia gatherings. His father was Alberto Ricci, who did actual prison time for racketeering before he died. This isn't rumors, Anna. This is documented fact. If you take this job, you're walking into a world that could get you killed. Or it could save me, Anna countered, surprising herself with the words. I'm drowning, Sophia. My boss is looking for any excuse to fire me. My rent is going up next month, and I'm so tired of feeling like I'm failing at everything. Maybe this is crazy, but what if it's also an opportunity? They argued about it through dinner, Sophia pleading with her to see reason, while Anna found herself defending a decision she hadn't even consciously made yet. By the time they parted ways outside the restaurant, Anna's mind was made up, even though she knew it was reckless. She would call Matteo Ricci. She would take his job offer, and she would deal with the consequences when they came. That night, she lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, and thinking about how one spilled cup of coffee had changed everything. Tomorrow, she would make the call that would either save her life or ruin it completely. The smart choice would be to forget Matteo Ricci and his dangerous smile and his promise of generous salary. But Anna had never been particularly good at making smart choices, and something told her that Matteo knew that about her already. He'd looked at her on that street corner and seen something, some quality that made him think she was worth pursuing, and a small, reckless part of her wanted to know what that something was. She finally fell asleep sometime after midnight, and in her dreams, she was back on Fifth Avenue. But this time, when she collided with Matteo, he caught her before she could fall, and his hands were surprisingly gentle for someone who was supposed to be dangerous. The next morning, Anna woke with a sense of purpose that surprised her. She'd expected to second-guess herself, to talk herself out of the decision she'd made, but instead, she felt calm and certain in a way she rarely did about anything. She got ready for work with more care than usual, choosing her best outfit, a navy dress that made her look more professional than she felt, and actually arriving at Morrison & Associates 5 minutes early. Marcus Davidson looked surprised to see her already at her desk when he walked past, and she took a small satisfaction in that. She worked through the morning with focused efficiency, knowing that this might be one of her last days here and wanting to leave on a good note regardless of Marcus's opinion of her. At lunch, she took her phone and Matteo's business card and went to the park across from her office building. The weather was pleasant for early October, cool but not cold, with a breeze that carried the smell of street vendor food and autumn leaves. She sat on a bench, pulled out her phone, and stared at the business card for a long moment. This was it, the moment of decision. Once she made this call, there would be no taking it back. She thought about Sophia's warnings, about the news articles mentioning the Ricci family's connections, about every movie she'd ever seen about organized crime, and how they never ended well for innocent people who got caught up in them. Then she thought about Marcus Davidson's disappointed face, about her empty refrigerator, about the stack of unpaid bills on her counter. She thought about how Matteo had looked at her, like she was someone worth noticing instead of just another rushed, clumsy girl in a city full of them. She dialed the number before she could change her mind. It rang twice before a male voice answered, not Matteo but someone younger, with less accent. Ricci International. How may I direct your call? I'm calling for Matteo Ricci, Anna said, pleased that her voice sounded steadier than she felt. My name is Ana Lucia Torres. He asked me to call. There was a brief pause, the sound of keys clicking on a keyboard. One moment, please, Miss Torres. The hold music was surprisingly tasteful, some kind of classical piece that Anna didn't recognize. She was just starting to wonder if she'd been forgotten when the music cut off and Matteo's voice came through the line, smooth and warm and somehow even more impactful without his physical presence to distract her. Ana Lucia, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. I was beginning to think you would not call. I've been thinking about your offer. Anna said, trying to sound professional and probably failing. I have questions. Of course you do. You would be foolish not to, and I do not think you are foolish. There was a pause, and then, are you free this evening? Come to my office. We can discuss the position properly. And you can see the workplace before you make your decision. Say 6 o'clock? Anna should have said no. She should have insisted on asking her questions over the phone, in the safety of a public park in the middle of the day. Instead, she heard herself agreeing. 6 o'clock. I'll be there. Excellent. The address is on the card. Ask for me at the front desk. And Anna? His voice dropped lower, more intimate. Wear something comfortable. We may be there for a while. He hung up before she could respond, leaving her staring at her phone and wondering what she'd just agreed to. Wear something comfortable. What did that mean? Was this actually a job interview, or something else entirely? She pushed the thoughts away and returned to work, but the afternoon dragged by with agonizing slowness. Every time she glanced at the clock, it seemed to have barely moved. By 5 o'clock, she was practically vibrating with nervous energy. She left work exactly on time, ignoring Jennifer's concerned look as she hurried out. The address on Matteo's card led her to a building in Midtown, not far from Times Square but tucked away on a quieter street. It was an older building, pre-war era with Art Deco details and an elegant lobby that spoke of old money and careful maintenance. The doorman nodded to her as she entered, as if he'd been expecting her, which was somehow more unnerving than if he'd questioned her presence. The front desk was staffed by a woman who looked like she could have been a fashion model, with sharp features and sleek black hair pulled back in a style that probably had a French name. Lucia Torres, Anna said, and hated how uncertain her voice sounded. I have an appointment with Mr. Ricci. The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, assessment or amusement. Of course, Miss Torres. Take the elevator to the 15th floor. Someone will meet you there. The elevator was all brass and mirrors, and Anna avoided looking at her reflection during the ride up. When the doors opened on the 15th floor, she found herself in a reception area that was all dark wood and leather furniture, with original art on the walls that looked expensive even to her untrained eye. A man was waiting for her, young and handsome in a well-cut suit, with the kind of easy smile that probably charmed everyone he met. Miss Torres, he said, offering his hand. I'm Luca, Mr. Ricci's assistant. Welcome to Ricci International. His handshake was firm, professional, and he gestured for her to follow him down a hallway lined with more art. Mr. Ricci is just finishing a call. Can I get you anything while you wait? Water? Coffee? He paused with a slight grin, though perhaps not coffee, given yesterday's incident. Anna felt herself blush. Water would be fine, thank you. Luca led her to an office that was larger than her entire apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Make yourself comfortable, he said. Mr. Ricci will be with you shortly. He left, closing the door behind him, and Anna was alone with her nerves and the stunning view. She walked to the windows and looked out at Manhattan, spreading beneath her, all lights and life and endless possibility. From up here, the city looked different, less chaotic and more beautiful, like something from a dream, instead of the place where she struggled every day. She was so absorbed in the view that she didn't hear the door open behind her. Didn't realize she was no longer alone until Matteo's voice broke the silence. Beautiful, is it not? I never tire of this view. Anna turned to find him standing in the doorway, and the impact of seeing him again hit her like a physical force. He was wearing another expensive suit, this one dark blue and perfectly fitted, with a white shirt open at the collar and no tie. He looked relaxed and powerful and dangerously attractive. And Anna had to remind herself to breathe. It's stunning, she managed to say. I've never seen the city from this high up before. Matteo smiled and moved into the room, closing the door behind him. Then I am glad you came. Please, sit. He gestured to one of the leather chairs facing his desk, and Anna sat, grateful to have something to do with her nervous energy. Matteo settled into the chair behind his desk with the easy grace of someone completely comfortable in their own space. So, Lucia Torres, you have questions. I am listening. Anna took a breath, trying to organize her thoughts. Your company, Ricci International. You said it was import and export. What exactly do you import and export? Luxury goods, Matteo replied easily. Art, wine, specialty foods, designer items. We have contracts with suppliers in Italy, France, Spain. Everything we do is legal and properly documented. I can show you our business licenses, our tax records, anything you need to verify this. And the other things people say about your family? Anna asked, deciding to be direct. The news articles that mention organized crime connections? Matteo's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, a sharpening of focus that made Anna suddenly very aware that she was alone in a room with a man who might be genuinely dangerous. I see you have done your research, he said quietly. Good. I would have been disappointed if you had not. Yes, my family has a history. My father made choices that I do not always agree with. But I run a legitimate business, Anna. Everything we do here is legal. I will not lie to you and say my name does not carry certain associations, but I can promise you that working for me will not put you in legal danger. But other kinds of danger? Anna pressed. Matteo leaned back in his chair, studying her. Life is full of danger, Bella. Walking down the street, getting on the subway, trusting the wrong person. I cannot promise you will be safe, because that is a promise no one can make. But I can promise that if you work for me, you will be under my protection, and those under my protection do not come to harm. There was something in the way he said it, a quiet certainty that was somehow more reassuring than any passionate declaration would have been. Anna found herself wanting to believe him, wanting to trust that dark-eyed intensity. What would I be doing? She asked. Specifically, managing the financial records for several of our accounts, Matteo said, and his tone shifted to something more businesslike. You would work with our accounting team, handle reports, coordinate with our bankers and investors. It is detailed work, requiring discretion and attention. You would have your own office, a company phone, and access to the resources you need. Your salary would be $90,000 a year, with health benefits and a performance bonus after the first 3 months. Anna's breath caught. $90,000 a year. That was more than double what she made at Morrison & Associates. That was enough to move to a better apartment, to pay off her loans, to actually save money for the first time in her adult life. It was enough to make her ignore every warning sign screaming at her to run. Why me? She asked. You could hire anyone, someone with more experience, better credentials. Why offer this job to someone who spilled coffee on you? Matteo stood and moved around the desk, settling on the edge of it so he was closer to her. You want the truth? You intrigued me. Most people, when they spill coffee on someone, they apologize and run away. They try to escape the situation as quickly as possible. You stayed. You offered to fix the problem, even though you clearly could not afford to. You were late for work, probably in trouble because of it, but you stood there and tried to make things right. He paused, his dark eyes holding hers. I value loyalty, Ana Lucia. I value people who take responsibility for their mistakes. These are rare qualities, and I want them in my organization. But you said I owe you, Anna pointed out, that I'm working to repay the damage. That doesn't sound like you're hiring me for my qualities. The debt is an excuse, Matteo admitted with a slight smile, a way to bring you here without making you feel like I am doing you a favor. Pride is important, especially to someone like you who has worked hard for everything she has. But make no mistake, Bella, I am not hiring you because you owe me. I am hiring you because I think you will be excellent at this job, and because I want you here. There was weight to those last words, an implication that went beyond professional interest, and Anna felt her pulse quicken. This was dangerous territory, accepting a job from a man who looked at her like he wanted to consume her. But it was also thrilling in a way nothing in her safe, struggling life had ever been. 3 months, she said slowly, and then I can choose to stay or leave. 3 months, Matteo confirmed, though I think you will choose to stay. You seem very confident about that. I am confident about many things. He stood and offered his hand. So, Ana Lucia Torres, do we have an agreement? Anna looked at his outstretched hand, at the strong fingers and the expensive watch glinting at his wrist. She thought about Marcus Davidson's final warning, about Sophia's concerned face, about every reason she should say no and walk away from this. Then she thought about the view from these windows, about 90,000 a year, about the way Matteo said her name like it was something precious. She reached out and took his hand. "We have an agreement." His grip was firm and warm, and he held her hand a moment longer than necessary, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that might have been accidental but felt deliberate. "You can start Monday. Luca will handle all the paperwork and get you set up with everything you need." He released her hand but didn't step back, maintaining the closeness between them. "I think this will be a very beneficial arrangement for both of us, Anna." The way he said it made her stomach flip with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. She managed a smile and tried to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. "I hope so. Trust me," Matteo said, and his smile was full of promise and danger. "You will not regret this." Anna left his office 15 minutes later with a folder full of paperwork, a company phone that was nicer than her personal one, and a racing heart that had nothing to do with the elevator ride down. Luca had been efficient and friendly, walking her through the employment contract and explaining the benefits package with the kind of thoroughness that suggested he'd done this many times before. He'd asked about her availability, her current employment situation, and whether she needed help with anything to make the transition easier. Anna had signed forms until her hand cramped, all the while feeling like she was signing away something more significant than just her employment status. When she finally stepped out onto the street, the evening had settled into that blue hour between day and night, and the city felt different somehow, charged with possibility. She pulled out her phone and stared at it for a long moment before calling Sophia. Her friend answered on the second ring, and Anna could hear the noise of a restaurant or bar in the background. "Please tell me you didn't do it," Sophia said without preamble. "Please tell me you threw away that business card and you're calling to tell me about a nice, normal dinner you had alone in your apartment." "I took the job," Anna said, and the words felt both terrifying and liberating. "I start Monday." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "Anna, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking that I'm tired of barely surviving," Anna replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I was thinking that 90,000 a year could change my life. I was thinking that maybe, just maybe, this is the opportunity I've been waiting for instead of the disaster you're convinced it is." Sophia sighed, and Anna could picture her friend rubbing her temples the way she did when stressed. Okay. If you're really doing this, then we need to set some ground rules. You check in with me every day. You tell me if anything seems off or dangerous. And the second, and I mean the absolute second, something illegal happens, you get out of there. Promise me." "I promise," Anna said, and meant it. She might be taking a risk, but she wasn't stupid. "It's going to be fine, Soph. It's just a job. With a mafia boss who looks at you like your dessert," Sophia muttered. "But fine, it's your life. Just don't say I didn't warn you when you end up as someone's Molly." "Mole," Anna corrected with a small laugh. "And I think that's only in old movies." They talked for a few more minutes, Sophia extracting promises of caution and daily check-ins, before hanging up. Anna stood on the corner, holding her new phone and her folder of paperwork, and tried to process what she'd just done. She'd quit her job, or would tomorrow. She'd agreed to work for a man who was almost certainly connected to organized crime. She'd looked into those dark eyes and decided that the risk was worth the reward. If this was a mistake, it was a spectacular one. The next morning, Anna walked into Morrison & Associates with her resignation letter already prepared. She'd spent half the night drafting it, trying to find the balance between professional and honest, and finally settled on something brief and polite that gave 2 weeks' notice. Marcus Davidson looked almost relieved when she handed it to him, which stung more than Anna wanted to admit. He accepted it with barely a question, told her they'd process her final paycheck, and that was it. 4 years of work, dismissed in under 5 minutes. Jennifer caught her at her desk afterward, eyes wide with concern. "You're really leaving? What happened? Did you find something else?" "I got an offer I couldn't refuse," Anna said, and tried not to think about how that phrase was associated with Mafia movies. Better pay, better opportunities. It's time for a change. "Is this about that guy from yesterday?" The one with the business card? Jennifer's voice dropped to a whisper. Anna, please tell me you didn't take a job with him without doing research. I did research, Anna assured her, which was technically true, even if her research had led to concerning conclusions she'd chosen to ignore. It's a legitimate company, import and export. It'll be fine. She said it with confidence. She was still trying to convince herself, she felt, and Jennifer didn't look convinced either, but there was nothing more to say. Anna had made her choice. The 2 weeks of notice crept by with agonizing slowness. Anna trained her replacement, a nervous young man fresh out of college who kept asking questions she didn't have the patience to answer. She cleaned out her desk, sorted her files, and tried not to think too hard about what Monday would bring. Matteo didn't call, which she told herself was fine, even as she found herself checking her new company phone obsessively. Sophia called every evening like clockwork, extracting reports on her day and reminding her that it wasn't too late to back out. But Anna knew she wouldn't back out. She'd made a deal, shaken Matteo's hand, signed the contracts. She was committed now, for better or worse. Her last day at Morrison & Associates was a Friday, and it passed without ceremony. There was no goodbye party, no cake in the break room, just a perfunctory handshake from Marcus and well wishes from Jennifer that felt more like warnings. Anna left the building at 5 o'clock and felt nothing but relief. Whatever happened next, at least she was done with that chapter of her life. The weekend stretched before her, empty and anxious. She tried to relax, to enjoy her last days of freedom, but her mind kept returning to Monday and Matteo and the office with the stunning view. She cleaned her apartment obsessively, reorganized her closet, tried on every work outfit she owned, trying to decide what to wear for her first day. Nothing felt right. Everything was too old, too worn, too obviously cheap compared to the elegant office where she'd be working. Finally, in a fit of reckless spending, she took herself shopping on Saturday and bought 2 new outfits with money she didn't really have. One was a gray pencil skirt and cream blouse combination that made her look professional and put together. The other was a black dress that hugged her curves in a way that was just this side of appropriate for office wear. She bought them both, along with new shoes that made her feet hurt but looked incredible, and tried not to think about how much of her savings account she'd just demolished. Sunday night, she barely slept. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of the city outside her window, and wondered if Matteo was sleeping or if he was the kind of man who prowled through the night. She wondered what her first day would be like, whether she'd see him or if he'd be busy with other aspects of his business. She wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or if this was the beginning of something extraordinary. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, she finally drifted into restless dreams, filled with dark eyes and dangerous smiles. Monday morning arrived with brilliant sunshine and Anna's alarm going off at 6. She showered with extra care, styled her hair until it fell in smooth waves down her back, and applied makeup with a steady hand she didn't feel. The gray skirt and cream blouse looked even better than she remembered, professional and elegant, and like someone who belonged in an office with original art on the walls. She left her apartment at 7:30, giving herself plenty of time to get to Midtown, and tried to ignore the way her hands shook as she locked her door. The building looked different in the morning light, less mysterious and more solidly real. The same doorman nodded to her, and this time he said, "Good morning, Miss Torres," which meant someone had told him to expect her. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt both too long and too short, and when the doors opened, Luca was waiting with the same easy smile he'd worn before. "Anna, welcome," he said warmly. "Ready for your first day?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Anna replied, and followed him into the office suite. The morning passed in a blur of introductions and information. Luca showed her to her office, which was smaller than Matteo's but still larger and nicer than any workspace she'd ever had. It had a window, a real desk made of actual wood instead of particle board, and a computer that looked like it cost more than her rent. He introduced her to the rest of the staff, a collection of efficient-looking people who all seemed to know exactly what they were doing. There was Maria, the woman from the front desk whose sharp features were softened slightly by a genuine smile. There was Carlos, head of the accounting department, who was in his 50s, with kind eyes and an air of competent calm. There were others whose names Anna tried desperately to remember, all polite and welcoming in a way that made her feel like an imposter. Matteo was nowhere to be seen. Luca explained that he had meetings all morning, and Anna told herself she wasn't disappointed even though part of her had been anticipating seeing him again. Instead, she spent the morning with Carlos, who walked her through the company's accounting system with patient thoroughness. It was complex but not impossible, tracking shipments and invoices and payments across multiple accounts and currencies. Carlos showed her the files she'd be responsible for, explained the reporting structure, and answered her questions with the kind of detail that suggested he'd been doing this for many years. "You'll do fine," he told her over lunch, which was catered sandwiches from somewhere expensive that tasted better than anything Anna had eaten in months. "Matteo has good instincts about people. If he hired you, it's because he thinks you can handle this." "How long have you worked for him?" Anna asked, curious about the man who seemed to command such loyalty. Carlos smiled. 15 years, since he took over the business from his father. I watched him transform this company from something questionable into something legitimate. He's a good man, Anna. Demanding, yes, and not someone to cross, but fair and loyal to those who are loyal to him. The afternoon brought more training, more systems to learn, more names to memorize. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, Anna's head was spinning with information and her eyes hurt from staring at computer screens. She was packing up her things, preparing to leave, when her office door opened and Matteo walked in. He filled the doorway the way he seemed to fill every space he occupied, with a presence that was both commanding and magnetic. He'd removed his suit jacket at some point during the day, and his white shirt was rolled up at the sleeves, revealing forearms that were surprisingly muscular. His tie was loosened, and there was a shadow of stubble along his jaw that made him look slightly less polished and somehow more dangerous. "Anna," he said, and hearing her name in his voice after a day of not seeing him hit her harder than she'd expected. "How was your first day?" "Overwhelming," Anna admitted honestly, "but good." Carlos was very helpful. "Carlos is one of my best," Matteo agreed. He moved into the office, and suddenly the space that had felt generously sized all day seemed small and intimate. "I wanted to check on you, make sure you were settling in well. I apologize for not being available today. Business required my attention elsewhere." "It's fine," Anna said, acutely aware of how close he was standing. "I understand you have other responsibilities." "Many responsibilities," Matteo agreed, "but none so pleasant as checking on my newest employee." His gaze traveled over her, not lecherously but with clear appreciation. "You look very professional, Bella, much better than covered in coffee." Anna felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I've been trying to forget about that." "Why?" Matteo's smile was slow and deliberate. "It brought you here, did it not? I, for one, am grateful for your clumsiness." He paused, then added, "Are you free for dinner? There are some things I would like to discuss with you about your role here, and I prefer to do it somewhere more comfortable than an office." Every warning bell in Anna's head went off at once. Dinner with her boss on her first day, a boss who happened to be a Mafia boss, and who looked at her like she was something he wanted to taste. It was a terrible idea, unprofessional and potentially dangerous, and exactly the kind of situation Sophia had warned her about. But even as she thought all of this, Anna heard herself saying, "I'd like that." "Excellent." Matteo's smile widened. "There is a restaurant I enjoy, quiet and private. We can talk without interruption. I will drive us." 20 minutes later, Anna found herself in the passenger seat of Matteo's car, which was exactly as expensive as she'd expected. It was some kind of luxury sedan, all black leather and sleek lines, and it smelled like his cologne, something woody and expensive that made her want to lean closer. He drove with the same confidence he did everything else, navigating the Manhattan traffic with ease while maintaining a conversation that somehow managed to be both casual and intense. He asked about her background, her family, her dreams. Anna found herself telling him things she rarely shared, about growing up in a Puerto Rican neighborhood in the Bronx, about her parents, who'd worked multiple jobs to put her through college, about her determination to make something of herself in a city that seemed designed to chew people up and spit them out. Matteo listened with genuine attention, asking follow-up questions that showed he was actually interested rather than just being polite. The restaurant was in the West Village, tucked away on a quiet street with no sign outside, and just a simple door that looked like it led to an apartment. Matteo parked in a spot that was clearly reserved for him and led her inside, where they were greeted by a host who knew him by name. The interior was all dark wood and soft lighting, with tables spaced far enough apart that conversations remained private. They were led to a corner booth that felt almost like a private room, and Anna slid into the leather seat, feeling distinctly out of her depth. "They do not have menus here," Matteo explained as the host disappeared. "The chef prepares what is fresh, what is best. You are not vegetarian, I hope?" "No," Anna said. "I eat everything." "Good." Matteo settled back in his seat, looking completely relaxed. "Then we will let Giovanni surprise us. He has never disappointed me." A waiter appeared with wine, an Italian red that Matteo tasted and approved. Anna accepted a glass even though she rarely drank during the week, needing something to do with her hands. The wine was incredible, smooth and complex in a way that made her usual $5 bottles taste like vinegar. "So," Matteo said, his dark eyes fixed on her across the table. "Tell me, Anna Lucia, what did you think of your first day, truly?" "I think I have a lot to learn," Anna replied carefully. "But I also think I can do this. The work isn't beyond my capabilities, just different from what I'm used to. And the people? Did anyone make you feel unwelcome?" "No, everyone was very kind. Carlos especially." Matteo nodded, satisfied. "Carlos is loyal. He has been with me since the beginning, when things were more complicated. He knows how to be discreet, how to handle sensitive information. You will learn much from him." "Sensitive information," Anna repeated. "Is that code for something I should be worried about?" Matteo's lips quirked in amusement. "You are direct. I appreciate this." "No, Anna, it is not code for anything illegal, if that is your concern. But in business, especially international business, there are always matters that require discretion. Contracts that are not yet public, negotiations that must remain private. This is what I mean." The first course arrived, some kind of seafood that Anna didn't recognize but that tasted like the ocean and butter and perfection. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment, and Anna tried to reconcile the man across from her with the image of a Mafia boss. He was charming and attentive, with impeccable manners and genuine interest in her thoughts. He was also clearly powerful, the kind of man who commanded respect and obedience without having to demand it. The combination was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. "Why did you really offer me this job?" Anna asked suddenly, the wine loosening her tongue. "And please don't tell me it's because I took responsibility for spilling coffee. There has to be more to it than that." Matteo set down his fork and looked at her, and there was something in his expression that made her breath catch. "You want honesty? Very well. I saw something in you that morning, something I recognized. You were struggling, working a job that did not appreciate you, barely surviving in a city that is designed to break people. But you had not been broken. You were still fighting, still trying, still showing up even when it would have been easier to give up. That kind of strength, that determination, it is rare, and I wanted it in my organization." He paused, taking a sip of his wine. "But there is more, if I am being completely honest. I found you attractive. I found your spirit appealing. I wanted to see more of you, to understand what makes Ana Lucia Torres fight so hard for a life that gives her so little in return. And now, having spent time with you, I find I was correct in my assessment. You are exactly as fascinating as I thought you would be." Anna's heart was pounding. "That sounds like you're saying this job offer was partly because you're interested in me romantically." "Perhaps," Matteo admitted without hesitation. "Does this trouble you?" "It should," Anna said. "You're my boss. This is inappropriate in about 7 different ways." "Many things in life are inappropriate," Matteo replied, his voice dropping lower. "This does not make them less appealing. But I am not a man who forces his attentions where they are not wanted, Anna. If you wish for our relationship to remain purely professional, I will respect that. I will be a good employer, nothing more. But if you are honest with yourself, I think you will admit that you feel this pull between us as strongly as I do." He was right, and Anna hated that he was right. There was something between them, had been from the moment she'd crashed into him on that street corner. It was attraction, yes, but also something deeper, and more complicated. A recognition, like she'd found something she'd been searching for without knowing she was looking. I don't know what I feel, Anna said quietly. This is all happening very fast. Then we take it slowly, Matteo said. We work together. We get to know each other. And we see what develops naturally, without pressure or expectation. I can be patient when the reward is worth waiting for, and you, Bella, are worth waiting for. The rest of dinner passed in a haze of incredible food and intense conversation. Matteo told her about Italy, about growing up in a family where loyalty meant everything and weakness was punished. He told her about taking over the business from his father, about the work he'd done to legitimize it while maintaining the power and respect that came with the Ricci name. He was open in a way that surprised her, sharing details that felt intimate and dangerous, and Anna found herself drawn in despite every logical reason to keep her distance. By the time he drove her home, it was after 11, and Anna felt drunk on wine and possibility. Matteo parked outside her building in Queens, in a neighborhood that probably looked rough compared to where he lived, but he didn't seem to notice or care. He walked her to her door, and they stood in the shabby hallway with its flickering lights and worn carpet, and Anna was acutely aware of how different their worlds were. "Thank you for dinner," she said, "and for being honest with me. Thank you for giving me a chance," Matteo replied. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture surprisingly gentle. "Sleep well, Anna Lucia. I will see you tomorrow." He left before she could respond, and Anna let herself into her apartment, feeling like she'd just survived something intense and transformative. She called Sofia immediately, needing to process what had just happened, and her friend answered with obvious anxiety. "Tell me you're okay," Sofia demanded. "I've been worried all day." "I'm fine," Anna assured her. "More than fine. Soph, I think I might be in trouble." "What kind of trouble? Did something happen?" "He took me to dinner," Anna said, collapsing onto her bed. "He took me to this incredible restaurant and we talked for hours. And he basically admitted that he hired me partly because he's interested in me romantically. And the worst part is, I'm interested too. I know I shouldn't be. I know it's dangerous and complicated and probably a disaster waiting to happen, but I can't stop thinking about him." Sofia was quiet for a long moment. "Anna, I love you, so I'm going to say this as gently as possible. You're playing with fire. This man is not someone you have a casual fling with. He's not a nice guy from a dating app who might break your heart. He's a mafia boss who could literally make you disappear if things go wrong." "I know," Anna whispered. "I know all of that. But Soph, when he looks at me, I feel like I matter. Like I'm someone worth noticing, instead of just another struggling girl in a city full of them." "Is it so wrong to want to feel that way?" "No," Sofia said softly. "It's not wrong. Just be careful, okay? Keep your eyes open, and promise me that the second things feel dangerous, you'll get out." Anna promised, even though she wasn't sure she could keep that promise. She was already in deeper than she'd intended, already feeling things she shouldn't feel for a man she barely knew. But as she lay in her bed that night, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. For the first time in years, she felt alive, genuinely alive, and that feeling was addictive enough to make her willing to risk everything. The next few weeks fell into a pattern that felt both normal and surreal. Anna went to work, learned her job, got better at managing the complex financial records that Ricci International required. Carlos was an excellent teacher, patient and thorough, and Maria became something like a friend, inviting Anna to lunch and sharing office gossip with the easy familiarity of someone who'd decided Anna was worth including. The work itself was interesting, more so than her old job had ever been, tracking shipments of wine and art and luxury goods across multiple countries and currencies. And then there was Matteo. He was professional at the office, treating her like any other employee when others were around. But there were moments, stolen glances across meetings, brief conversations in his office, dinners after work that became more frequent when the connection between them grew stronger and more undeniable. He was charming and attentive, remembering details about her life and asking follow-up questions that showed he'd been listening. He sent flowers to her desk on her 1-month anniversary with the company, a massive arrangement of roses and lilies that made Maria raise her eyebrows knowingly. He texted her in the evenings, Nothing inappropriate, but enough to keep him present in her mind even when they weren't together. Anna knew she was falling for him, could feel herself sliding into dangerous territory, but she couldn't seem to stop. Every interaction with Matteo left her wanting more, craving his attention like a drug. Sofia continued to warn her, continued to extract promises of caution that Anna meant sincerely even if she didn't always follow through on them. Her parents called weekly, pleased that she'd found a better job but blissfully unaware of who her employer really was. Anna told them it was import and export, which was true, and left out everything else that mattered. It was 6 weeks into her employment when things shifted again. Anna was working late, trying to finish a report that Carlos needed for a morning meeting, when Matteo appeared in her office doorway. It was after 8, and the office was mostly empty, just a few lights still on in the building. "You work too hard," he said, leaning against the doorframe with his jacket off and his sleeves rolled up. "This is not good for your health." "Says the man who's still here at 8 o'clock, Anna replied, but she saved her work and stretched, feeling the tension in her shoulders. "I'm almost done anyway." "Come," Matteo said, straightening. "You need a break. There is something I want to show you." Anna followed him without question, which should have concerned her but didn't. They took the elevator up, past the 15th floor where the offices were, continuing to the 25th floor which Anna hadn't known the company occupied. Matteo used a key to unlock a door that opened onto the most beautiful apartment Anna had ever seen. It was a penthouse, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture, with a view of Manhattan that put even his office view to shame. The skyline glittered below them, millions of lights marking millions of lives, and Anna felt like she was floating above it all. "You live here?" she asked, turning to look at Matteo. He'd moved to the windows and was looking out at the view, his profile sharp against the lights of the city. "Sometimes," he said, "when I work late and do not feel like driving home. It is convenient." He turned to look at her, and there was something in his expression that made her pulse quicken. "I wanted to show you this view, at night when the city is most beautiful. I thought you would appreciate it." Anna moved to stand beside him at the windows, drawn by both the view and his presence. "It's incredible! I've never seen anything like it." "This city can be cruel," Matteo said quietly. "But it can also be beautiful, if you know where to look. You understand this, I think. You have seen both sides." "Everyone who lives here sees both sides eventually," Anna replied. "The trick is not letting the cruel part break you." Matteo turned to face her fully, and suddenly he was very close, close enough that she could see the flecks of lighter color in his dark eyes. "You are not broken, Ana Lucia. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met. Do you know that?" Anna couldn't breathe. The air between them felt charged, electric, and she knew if she didn't step back now, something would happen that she couldn't take back. But she didn't want to step back. She wanted to move closer, wanted to close the distance between them, and see what would happen. "Matteo," she whispered, and his name on her lips felt like permission. He kissed her then, slow and deliberate, one hand coming up to cup her face while the other settled at her waist. It was everything Anna had been imagining since that first day on the street corner, and more than she'd been prepared for. He kissed like he did everything else, with complete confidence and devastating skill, and Anna felt herself melting into it, into him, letting herself want something she knew she shouldn't have. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Matteo rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that since the moment I met you," he admitted. "You have made these weeks both wonderful and torturous, Bella." "We shouldn't," Anna said, even as her hands fisted in his shirt, holding him close. "You're my boss. This is complicated. Life is complicated," Matteo replied. "This does not make it less worth living, but I will not push you, Anna. If you want to pretend this did not happen, we can do that. If you want to maintain professional distance, I will respect that. But know that I want you, in every way a man can want a woman, and I think you want me too." Anna knew she should be sensible, should step back and re-establish boundaries. Instead, she pulled him down and kissed him again, pouring all her confused feelings into the contact. When they broke apart this time, she was breathless and decided. "I don't want to pretend it didn't happen," she said. "I don't want to maintain distance. I want I want this, whatever this is, even if it's crazy. Matteo's smile was brilliant, genuine in a way she'd never seen from him before. Then we will be crazy together. But Anna, you must understand. Being with me, it comes with complications beyond just the professional. My life is not simple. My family, my business, there are dangers that come with association with me. I need you to know this before we go further. I know, Anna said, thinking of all those news articles, all of Sophia's warnings. I've known from the beginning. I'm choosing this anyway. Then you are either very brave or very foolish, Matteo said, but his tone was fond. Either way, I am grateful. They spent the rest of the evening in his penthouse, talking and kissing, and slowly mapping the territory between them. Matteo was surprisingly open about his life, about the challenges of running a business that straddled legal and illegal worlds, about the constant balancing act of maintaining power while trying to be better than his father had been. Anna told him about her fears, her dreams, the pressure she felt to succeed not just for herself but for her parents who had sacrificed so much. By the time he drove her home in the early hours of the morning, she felt like she understood him better, and maybe understood herself better too. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments and growing intimacy. They kept their relationship quiet at work, maintaining professional boundaries during business hours. But everyone probably knew anyway. Maria certainly did, based on the knowing looks she gave Anna when Matteo would appear at her desk with coffee or lunch. Carlos never said anything directly, but he had a way of smiling that suggested approval. Even Luca, who Anna had learned was more than just an assistant, but Matteo's cousin and right hand, seemed pleased by the development. Anna moved through this new reality, feeling like she was living someone else's life. She had a job she enjoyed, making more money than she'd ever imagined. She had a relationship with a man who was dangerous and powerful and incredibly attentive. She'd moved to a better apartment in Brooklyn, with actual space and windows that weren't permanently grimy. Her parents were proud of her success, and Sophia, while still worried, had admitted that Anna seemed happier than she'd been in years. But there were moments when the reality of who Matteo was would intrude on their bubble. Men in expensive suits who came to his office and left looking either satisfied or intimidated. Phone calls he took in Italian, his voice hard and commanding in a way she never heard when he spoke to her. The security detail that appeared whenever they went anywhere public together, discreet but always present. Anna told herself these were just precautions, that Matteo's concerns about danger were overblown. She wanted to believe that their relationship could exist, separate from the darker aspects of his business. She was wrong. It was 3 months into her employment when everything changed. Anna was at work, finishing up a quarterly report, when Carlos appeared at her office door looking pale and worried. "Anna, you need to come with me, now." The urgency in his voice made her stand immediately. "What's wrong? What happened?" "Just come," Carlos said, already moving. She followed him through the office to Matteo's door, which was closed. Carlos knocked once, and then opened it without waiting for a response. Matteo was at his desk, and the expression on his face made Anna's stomach drop. He looked furious, a cold rage that transformed his features into something harsh and frightening. "Anna," he said, and his voice was controlled in a way that was somehow worse than shouting. "Sit down." She sat, her mind racing through possibilities of what could have caused this reaction. Had she made a mistake in her work? Had someone found out about their relationship and complained? Matteo stood and moved to the windows, his back to her, and the silence stretched until it was almost unbearable. "There is a problem," he finally said. "Someone has been skimming money from our accounts. Small amounts, spread across multiple transactions, but over the past 3 months, it adds up to nearly $200,000. Anna felt like she'd been punched. "That's impossible. I would have noticed discrepancies like that." "One would think," Matteo said, and there was something in his tone that made her blood run cold. He turned to face her, and his expression was unreadable. "The transactions all went through accounts you managed, Anna. Every single one." The implication hit her like a physical blow. "You think I did this? You think I've been stealing from you?" "I think someone has been stealing from me," Matteo replied, "and all the evidence points to your accounts. So either you are responsible or someone is trying to make it appear that you are responsible. Either possibility is a problem. Anna stood, feeling her hands shake. I didn't steal from you, Matteo. I would never, I swear to you, I haven't done anything wrong. For a long moment, he just looked at her, and Anna couldn't read his expression. This wasn't the man who kissed her gently, who held her while they watched the city from his windows. This was the other Matteo, the one who ran a criminal organization, who commanded loyalty through fear as much as respect. Finally, he nodded once. I believe you, he said, and some of the tension left the room. But someone does not want me to believe you. Someone has gone to great effort to frame you for this theft, which means someone wants to damage my relationship with you, or they want to use you to get to me. Either way, you are now in danger. The words settled over Anna like ice water. In danger from who? That is what we need to discover, Matteo said. He moved to his desk and pulled out a file, spreading papers across the surface. Carlos has been investigating these transactions. They are sophisticated. Whoever did this knows our systems well, knows how to hide their tracks. It has to be someone inside the organization. Anna moved closer, looking at the papers even though the numbers swam in front of her eyes. Someone in this office, someone she worked with, had been stealing and setting her up to take the fall. The betrayal hurt almost as much as the fear. What do we do? She asked. We find them, Matteo said grimly, and then we make sure they never threaten what is mine again. The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered her, but instead, Anna felt oddly reassured. Whatever happened, Matteo would protect her. She just hoped the price of that protection wouldn't be too high. The investigation consumed the next 2 weeks. Carlos worked with an intensity Anna hadn't seen before, going through every transaction, every login, every possible access point. Matteo brought in an outside security expert, a woman named Isabella who looked like she could kill someone with her bare hands and probably had. Anna continued working, but the atmosphere in the office had changed. People looked at her differently, with suspicion or pity, and she knew the rumors were spreading. That new girl, the one who caught the boss's eye, turns out she was stealing all along. Matteo kept her close during this time, insisting she stay at his penthouse rather than her own apartment. He said it was for safety, that whoever was behind this might try to harm her to cover their tracks. Anna didn't argue. She felt safer with him, surrounded by his security and his presence. They fell into a strange domesticity, eating dinner together late at night, talking about the investigation, about everything and nothing. In those quiet moments, Anna saw a different side of Matteo, vulnerable and worried in a way he never showed anyone else. It was Luca who finally found the answer. He burst into Matteo's office on a Thursday afternoon, his usual easy smile replaced by grim satisfaction. We found him. It was Marco, from the warehouse division. He's been skimming for months, but when Anna started reviewing the accounts more carefully than her predecessor, he panicked and tried to frame her. Anna felt relief wash over her so intensely she had to sit down. Marco, she barely knew him, had only met him twice at company events. Why would he target me specifically? Because you were new, and because you were close to Matteo, Luca explained, glancing at his cousin. He thought if he could make you look guilty, it would distract from his own theft. He didn't count on how thoroughly we would investigate, or how much Matteo would protect you. Matteo's expression was cold and dangerous. Where is he now? Downstairs, in the conference room. He doesn't know we've figured it out yet. Luca's smile was sharp. I thought you might want to have a conversation with him personally. What happened in that conference room, Anna never knew for certain. Matteo went down with Luca and several other men, leaving Anna in the office with instructions not to follow. She heard raised voices, the sound of furniture moving, and then silence. When Matteo returned an hour later, his knuckles were bruised and there was a hardness in his eyes that made her remember exactly who he was. It's handled, was all he said. You're cleared of all suspicion. Marco has confessed to everything and agreed to make restitution. He won't be a problem anymore. Anna didn't ask what happened to Marco. She didn't want to know. Some parts of Matteo's world were better left in shadow, and she was learning to live with that reality. What mattered was that she was safe. Her reputation was restored. And the man she'd fallen for had believed in her innocence, even when the evidence suggested otherwise. That night, in his penthouse with the city lights spread below them, Matteo pulled her close and held her with an intensity that spoke of how worried he'd been. "I would have burned this entire organization to the ground before I let anything happen to you," he whispered against her hair. "You understand this, yes? You are more important to me than any of it." Anna looked up at him, at this dangerous, complicated man who had somehow become essential to her happiness. "I love you," she said, the words surprising her even as she spoke them. "I know it's crazy and probably stupid, but I do. I love you, Matteo Ricci." His smile was brilliant and genuine, transforming his entire face. "Then we are both crazy and stupid, because I love you too, Ana Lucia Torres. From the moment you spilled that coffee, you have been changing my life. You make me want to be better than what I was born to be." They stood at the windows, wrapped in each other's arms, and Anna thought about how far she'd come from that rushed morning 3 months ago. She'd taken a risk on a stranger with a dangerous smile, had accepted a job that seemed too good to be true, had fallen in love with a man who existed in the shadows between legal and illegal, right and wrong. It should have been a disaster. By all reasonable measures, it was a disaster. But as Matteo kissed her, gentle and possessive and full of promise, Anna couldn't bring herself to regret any of it. She'd found something she hadn't even known she was looking for, a love that was complicated and dangerous and absolutely real. Her parents would never understand. Sophia would never stop worrying. The life she'd chosen was one that would always carry risk, always require her to live with uncertainty about what darkness existed in the corners of Matteo's world. But it was her life now, her choice, and she'd made it with open eyes. She'd walked into his world for a debt that didn't really exist, stayed for money she desperately needed, and remained because somewhere along the way, she'd fallen completely and irrevocably in love. The girl who'd spilled coffee on a stranger had become the woman who held a mafia boss's heart, and somehow, impossibly, that felt like exactly where she was meant to be. 6 months later, Anna stood in Matteo's office, now redecorated with some of her own touches, looking out at the city that had brought them together. She'd been promoted to chief financial officer, her work having proven invaluable to the legitimate expansion of Ricci International. Her relationship with Matteo was no longer a secret, and the ring on her finger caught the light as she turned to look at him across the room. He was on the phone, speaking rapid Italian to someone overseas, and he looked up to catch her watching him. His expression softened immediately. That special smile he reserved only for her, and he held up one finger to indicate he'd be finished soon. Anna smiled back and returned her attention to the view, to this city of millions where one clumsy moment had changed everything. She'd come to New York to build a life, to make something of herself despite the odds. She'd succeeded in ways she never could have imagined, though not in any way she'd planned. The path had been dangerous and complicated and sometimes frightening, but it had led her here, to this office, to this man, to this unexpected happiness that she protected as fiercely as he protected her. Matteo finished his call and came to stand beside her, sliding an arm around her waist and pulling her close. "What are you thinking about, Bella?" "About coffee," Anna said with a small laugh. "About how I owe you everything because I was clumsy and late one Monday morning." "You owe me nothing," Matteo replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "But I owe you everything, Ana Lucia. You gave me something I did not know I was missing. You gave me a reason to be more than what my family name demanded. You gave me love." They stood together in the fading afternoon light, two people from different worlds who had found each other in the chaos of a city that never slept. The debt that had brought them together had been repaid 1,000 times over. Not in work or obligation, but in trust and love and the choice to build something real in the midst of all the complications. Outside, Manhattan hummed with its endless energy, millions of stories unfolding in every direction. But in this moment, in this office, there was only their story. The one that had started with spilled coffee and a dangerous smile and had become something neither of them could have predicted. Anna leaned into Matteo's embrace and thought about fate and chance and the beautiful accidents that change everything. She'd walked into his life owing him for a ruined suit. She'd stayed and found she owed him nothing, because what they had wasn't about debt at all. It was about choice, about taking a risk on something impossible, and finding that sometimes, impossibly, everything works out exactly as it should. The city glittered below them, full of promise and danger and endless possibility. And Ana Torres, who had once been just another struggling girl trying to survive, had found her place in its heart, in his arms, exactly where she belonged. The end.